Hello, okay, so I'm gonna make a video about drawing a cylinder, and you can just use any ordinary object around the house. I just am using this roll of paper towels, anything that's cylindrical. It doesn't change the width all the way down, it's perfect. As you can see, I use tape here. There's 2 yellow pieces of tape there that I am holding as a marker so I don't move it too far back, too far forward. I have my pencils here, get them out of the way. For this demonstration, I'm going to use a B pencil, but you can use an HB at home. These are just exercises so you can understand how to measure in sight and things of that nature. Once we get into the main project, you're going to go back to your harder pencils, your 2H, and etc. But for now, you can use a softer pencil. I'm using a B for the sake of the drawing, so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So basically, I'm going to show you how to just draw, measure, and apply ellipses to a simple form like this. So it's drawing from observation. So I'm going to flip this around. And as I'm doing this, I want you to, when you put your paper on, make sure you put your paper on parallel to the border of the wood here, okay? Another thing, it is important that you draw vertically in the same plane as you're measuring from. If I was to draw this and it was flat on the table on this surface, I wouldn't get the same measurements. It would be distorted. So that's why you have a drawing table and you are required to have one in an online class so you can do observational drawing. All right, so the first thing, and I'm gonna make a separate video about this where I can hold the camera and I can measure in front of you, but I'm gonna try to do this as I'm looking. Actually, this might work. I'm gonna look at the camera, and what you're gonna do, I'm actually gonna do this as I'm looking at the object after I demonstrate to you right now. But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to measure, I'm gonna put the point of the tip of the pencil at the beginning of the object right here, right? So it's right there. And I'm gonna slide my thumb to the farthest side of the object. That looks about right. So the width of the pencil, or what is showing of the pencil at the ending where my thumb is the width of the object. Now I'm going to measure the height by counting the width of the object. 1, and then do you see where my thumb is? I'm gonna put the pencil tip down where my thumb is. 2, I'd say like 2 1/4, maybe 2 1/3, a little less than 2 1/2. What I mean by that, it counted about 2 1/2 times. The width is the unit of measure, and the unit of measure is the short to the long. So everything has a height and a width, because when you're working with 2 dimensions, it's flat. So you only have height and width. This has depth, that has a 3rd dimension. But we're trying to translate 3 dimensions into 2. In order to do that, we can only think about height and width. So when you're measuring something, you want to measure the short side and compare it to the long side. So clearly the short side is the width. So you measure the width first, and then you count how many widths are in the height. And that's as simple as it is. When you hear the word measuring, you're not getting a ruler and measuring the exact dimensions and blah, blah, blah. That's not what it's about. You're measuring proportion. You're comparing one side to another side, and how many times does it count into it? That's it. So I'm gonna turn around and I'm actually gonna measure this because I don't know how well my measurement was looking in the camera. So you can kind of see what I'm doing somewhat. So I'm gonna measure this. I'm also holding my arm straight out, almost as if I'm like holding a pistol or something. But the reason being is because if you have your arm at different lengths or depths, you're gonna get different measurements. You don't want that. You want the same measurement all the time. So you have to kind of, your arm's not gonna go any further out than it already does. So the farthest out, I'm putting the tip of my pencil to the left of the paper towel roll and put my thumb to the very right side. I'm gonna put my hold that, put my pencil vertical, put the tip of my pencil at the very, very top, the highest part, which is the back of the ellipse. And I'm going to count 1, 2. Now from this point of view, because the camera is actually higher than me, and therefore the measurement was a little different when I was measuring using the camera. This is a 1-to-2 ratio, an even 1-to-2 ratio. I'm just going to double check. I always measure twice, check once. One, two. It's actually, I counted a little too fast last time, so take your time counting. It's actually a little bit more than 2. So if you get a pound of ham at the deli, they say you want a heavy pound or a light pound. Heavy pound would be a little over 2, right? Or a little over 1. But in this case, this is a little over 2, and I'll explain myself in a second. So my width, I'm going to make right here. Just ignore that I have baby in the other room. So this is going to be my width. The width can be any width you want. I could make my width this big if I wanted to, as long as I made the height in proportion to that. So I said the width counts 2+ times, right? So what I do now is I get a straight edge. I'm going to use my ruler, but I'm going to use the side without the numbers. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my ruler here. You can use any ruler. You can use something smaller. You can also use your pencil. But I'm going to put my ruler here. Put my finger right here, as you can kind of see. I'm just marking the end of the line. And then, actually, I'll do it with my thumb. So I'm marking the end of the line. And then right now I'm just going to go up, mark it. I'm going to go up again. I'm going to mark it. And then I said it was a little bit more. And it wasn't like a quarter more, but if it was a half more, then I would divide this in half and then add half up top. If it was a quarter more, then I would divide the half into another half, which is a quarter. And I would take that and I would move it up. It was a little less than that. It was something like that. And now that's where I'm like guesstimating. It's not precise, but it's pretty darn close. So I'm going to take this measurement here. I'm going to use my pencil. I'm going to add it to the top. And I just marked it. So that little mark I put, where you can see it in the camera. And I'm going to draw a line straight across. And it's nice because it's right next to the paper, and I can try to make it as parallel to the paper as I can. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line straight up and down. And straight up and down. Now notice, I'm drawing a lot of lines. Think of it like a golf swing. You're going to take a bunch of practice swings, and then you finally hit the ball. So I'm running the pencil up and down a bunch of times, kind of getting the feel, the rhythm, the motion. And as I'm drawing, I'm also using my elbow, I'm using my shoulder, but I'm locking my wrist. The reason I'm saying to lock your wrist, because you're used to not locking your wrist. You write your name, this is how you hold a pencil. You're usually writing with these small kind of curves and marks. But it's not the case here. You're drawing large, so you have to think large, lock your wrist, and you start to think big shapes. Also, you're drawing an object, you're translating this from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions. So you have to simplify it. And you have to simplify from a large shape to small shape. So this is the generalist large height versus width of what that shape occupies, that form, that thing. I'm not even calling it paper towel roller anymore. It's just a cylinder, but that's just another name. I'm drawing this thing and I'm breaking down the information and I'm going to apply it here. The second you give a name to it, it kind of becomes more intimidating. All right. Now, after I've done this, I have my straight lines. Sometimes I have to put my head here so I can kind of see if these lines are straight because I'm on an angle and it's hard to see. All right, trying to work fast. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this space in half, right? From here to here. And I just guessed, call it guess and check. And here's how that's my guess, and this is my check. So it should be equivalent on both sides. If this side is equivalent to the other side, which it's a little off, so I just move that line over to the left, and that seems about right. That's the middle line. Oops, I was checking before I guessed. This one was a little off too. There you go. So this is the middle line here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect these 2 points. The other thing I'm doing here, which I want you to practice, is I'm using the side of my hand to slide up and down. I'm pressing against the board. Stabilizes my arm, stabilizes my hand, allows me to make a line. I don't care about the line quality right now. I'm not too concerned about that. I'm just trying to get the information, trying to make the line as straight as I can. And I'm making these like long gestural marks. That's all. Next thing I'm going to do is I need to figure out this ellipse. You can see the ellipse up top, right? I'm going to try to squish it with my finger, or it's that big. It's not big compared. If I counted that height of the ellipse all the way down and counted how many times it counted into the height of this form, it'd be like 10, 15, maybe more. It's too difficult to count that. And this is another form of measuring. I have to get the height of the ellipse. I just can't make it up here. I have to get the information. So what I'm going to do is I can measure that. Oops. I have to line it up like a weatherman. I can measure that, and then you turn it. This is hard to do because I'm trying to do it looking at the, and then you turn it, and then you can count. Oh my God, how do you do this? Oh, whatever. You're going to count in this direction. So I'm going to do this as I'm looking at the viewer. So you're going to put the tip of your pencil right at the tip of that, at the height of the ellipse. Slide your thumb down to the bottom of the ellipse, just like I have here. And then you're going to turn it sideways and count 1, 2, 3, and it might count a little less than 3 based off of this information I'm getting here. It's a little distorted because I'm looking at the camera. When I look here, I bet you it's going to be different. My eye level is a little lower, which means this is a little smaller. Things change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the height of the ellipse. And I'm going to count it into the width of the form. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It counts exactly 5 times, almost perfectly. So how do you know how to make, if it counts 5 times, what do I do? How do I know how big that shape is? You have to guesstimate, what do you think a fifth of the distance is? If this was divided into 5 different equal shapes, what would that guess be? So I'm going to put a guess here and be like, that might be 1/5. And if it counts 5 times in, it's 1/5. So I'm going to count 1, and then I'll put my finger here, 2, put my finger here, 3, put my finger here, 4, put my finger here, 5. I lucked out. It's perfectly 5. So my little guess was right. That never happens. It's always a little off. It takes you a little while to figure it out, but it kind of worked out. So I take this measurement here, this small little distance. I take it here. I'm marking it with my finger and my pencil. As you can see, I'm just using my finger here. I'm going to turn my pencil vertically, put it up here. You put my other finger there to mark it, so I can take this off and just make a mark right there. That's it. And then I'm going to run it across the other side. That is the height of the ellipse. But when you draw an ellipse, you have to take it a step further, because an ellipse is kind of tricky. You just can't go in there and throw an elliptical form, and I don't want you to do that. There's a system. There's a system, everything in you. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to find the center of this, from this point to this point. And you have to double check to see if it's equivalent, which it is. And then I'm going to run it across. So it's basically these crosshairs that exist here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an ellipse over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to try to slide over a little bit. And I'm just going to make a rectangle. I'm going to make it a little wider in terms of height than this one. Just to kind of explain what I'm talking about. So this will be the halfway point. This will be the halfway point. So I have my crosshairs, the same thing as this, same concept. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to arc the top part. When I'm arcing, I just kind of just make a subtle arc, not a sharp curve, just a subtle arc. Same thing down here. I'm going to do the same opposite arc here. Some people like to turn the paper, but just take the board. Try to build the skill. I'm going to put a little mini arc on the left side and a mini arc on the right side. And then eventually you can connect those arcs. And the nice thing about breaking up your ellipse in quadrants is that this little curve that I just made here is the same all the way around. So if I make the equivalent arcs on that stuff, you're kind of creating that shape. And an ellipse is a constantly curving form. It never flatlines and it never points. And I'm doing this kind of quickly. If sometimes it is easier to put this flat on the table and kind of get in there. But just what I mean by that, an ellipse never flatlines like I'm doing here. That's a no. And it never points. That's another no. And those are common things that I see when people are beginning to learn to draw. So I'm going to apply the same concept here, except it's a lot smaller in height. So it's a compressed ellipse. It makes it a little more tricky to draw that arc, but I'll show you how to go about it. In this case, I'm going to put the palm of my hand, bed it into the paper, and I'm just kind of using that as an rotating back and forth or pivoting back and forth. And I'll do the same thing here, but now I'm not holding it on there. I'm just sliding it on the paper. And I put little baby arcs here, little baby arcs here. These arcs that I just made, the original ones, they're a little bit too low, so I'm going to make an adjustment. And that's what I expect you to do. The more you draw ellipses, the better you're going to understand if they're off or not, and then you just make those quick adjustments. Okay, that's fine there. I have my ellipse. Now I need the ellipse at the bottom, right? I can show you how to throw the ellipse on the top, and that'll be at the very end. That's super fast. I'm just trying to be quick with this video. So there's an ellipse at the bottom. I can't see it. It's an opaque form. I can't see through it. I can see where the ellipse might end, or not end, but like the halfway point, and I get a sense of it, but that's really tricky. I'm going to show you a really quick way of just throwing the same ellipse down there. If I hold a coin, it's an imaginary coin. Actually, we don't need a coin. I hold this here, right? It's at eye level. You can't see it. If I lower it, that ellipse gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So logically, if this ellipse is below this ellipse will be bigger, right? So let's just go with that logic. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the height of this ellipse, bring it down here, mark it. And I'm going to just add a little bit. Because I'm close to this form, this ellipse will be a little bigger than that one. If I'm further away, the ellipse will be smaller. It depends on your distance, but I'm just going to make it about this big, which is maybe half the size bigger than what it is. And that's, again, not always the case. Everything is relative. So I'm running a line across. I already have my halfway point established, and I just need to put a halfway point here. Of course, I want you to measure, check, but I'm doing this quickly for the sake of the video. And then you're going to throw in your ellipse. Now, I'm making this video on my kitchen table because that's how I assume most of you are going to be drawing this. Using the same tools and methods that you should have at home, I have here. I have the same limitations. I'm not in my studio. I'm in the kitchen. Hence, you hear the baby crying in the other room. Okay, so you see my ellipse I just drew, right? So here's the bottom ellipse. What I'm going to do is you're not going to see through it. I mean, unless you draw in a transparent form. But you can lighten this. That's what the kneaded eraser is great for. It just lightens the line. It still exists, but it lightens the line. And where this ellipse meets the halfway point right here is where it starts to go up and follow the vertical line. Don't cut any more of the ellipse off. It's not, it just hits it right around the halfway point, which is right here. And then right there, it starts to go up. Now, I guess I can erase this center piece just so you can kind of see what this looks like. Once this comes down, it follows in there. Once this comes down. Remember, this is freehand. When we start to draw these objects as a still life, I'm going to allow you to use rulers and things for vertical lines. And then later on, the freehand stuff can take over. But The last thing is this little hole here, right? It's a simple thing to apply on. All you have to do is measure the width of that hole, right? I'm going to measure the width of it now, and I'm going to count how many times it counts in the width of the entire form. 1, 2, 3. It counts in 3 times, so it's a third of the width. So I'm going to guesstimate a third of the width. There's too many marks down here, so I'm just going to go up here. So maybe that's a third. I'm going to count 1, 2. I lucked out again. It's a perfect third. So that is from this distance to this distance. That basically is the distance of the center part. So I'm going to go from center out, and I'm basically I'm going to try to maybe do something like this. It has to be equal on both sides, going from center out. And I'm going to take this distance and see if it's equal to the distance that I have here, which it is, because this is just a guide. So I'm trying to get this to be perfect. And it's center out. It's equal on both sides. Yes, it is. And then what I can do is just make a smaller, rectangle. But here's the trick. I'm going to cross my corners. This is where I might confuse a lot of you. Cross my corners. That finds my center, right? I have my line here. I have my line here. When that line hits the cross corner line, then it goes over to the other side. Really simple. I have my vertical, I have my horizontal crosshairs, and I throw my ellipse in. Done. And there's the ellipse in the center. And if you want to make this transparent, you could draw a line straight down and then put an ellipse down there. You have the central core, which would be kind of cool, but you don't have to. So that is going to be one of the exercises you're going to do. And the next video will be a different object, a pyramid of some sort that I hopefully can find around the house somewhere.